our game, 7:30 NBC, Charlotte at Maryland. And a couple weeks ago, Todd, you called me and you said, "Hey, this game's going to be kind of fun. I can just tell you that this game has a chance to be pretty fun for our week 2." There's a lot, and the more I look into it, the more excited I get about what we're going to see this coming weekend. Now, I do live by this adage, Todd, and that is the less sleeves that your coach wears, the better it is. And Charlotte head coach Biff Poggi, who you've gotten to know pretty well, is awesome. Awesome personality, awesome temperament, awesome recruiter, clearly, as someone who led a St. Francis program to national prominence just a couple of years ago at the high school level. And then last year, assistant and associate head coach over at Michigan, coming over now. You can feel the juice. And at the same time, Maryland with Mike Loxley, a very successful year last year. You bring back Taulia Tagovailoa. You have in theory, an improved defense this year as well over in College Park. Just take us through this matchup. What are you seeing? What are you looking forward to? Because I think there's a lot of storylines.
Oh, there's so many storylines. I mean, first of all, you mentioned Taulia Tagovailoa. I mean, he's the best or the most accomplished, the most experienced quarterback in the Big Ten coming back. Got off to a good start. Didn't have to play much into the third quarter in their opening win against Towson, but he played well. I mean, he is a dynamic player, right? They've been good on offense. They've been good at the skill positions. You know, their offensive line is going to get challenged this week by Charlotte's defense. That'll be the big key and the big question for Maryland in this week 2 game. But they're exciting, you know, and Mike Loxley is a great recruiter. He's done a great job. He's got so many connections in that Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, but so does Biff Poggi. And that's one of the great stories. I mean, you know, if you don't know anything about Biff, we'll be telling his story a little bit this week. He's a fascinating character. First time as a head coach in college football. You mentioned St. Francis, where he had success. He was also won a bunch of state championships at Gilman Academy in Baltimore before he was at St. Francis. But this roster, you know, and so much has been made about what Dion did to the Colorado roster and turning it over and bringing in his guys. Well, Biff did a similar thing at Charlotte. He's got about 55 guys that came in from the transfer portal, and 35 of those guys either played at St. Francis or are from the Washington, D.C., Maryland, Virginia area. In fact, 4 players transferred to Charlotte from the University of Maryland. So there's going to be a lot of connections and players that know each other and maybe played against each other or with each other. So I think the game is going to be very competitive. I think it'll be very, very chippy from start to finish. But I do think this. I think that Charlotte's defense, because I've been to see them practice. I live in Charlotte now, so I've been over to see them a couple times. Their defense is legit. They've got guys that transferred in from Michigan, Alabama, Maryland, you know, all over the place, Ole Miss, and they've got some real dudes on defense. So their defense is ahead of their offense, and I think that'll be a fun matchup to watch, the Maryland offense and the Charlotte defense on Saturday night. But I do think, you know, it may not look great on paper, but trust me, I think the game's going to be a pretty entertaining game to watch.
It's going to be a lot of fun, not to mention another transfer, so to speak. Mike Miller, the offensive coordinator at Charlotte, was the co-offensive coordinator at Maryland a year ago. So if there's anyone who knows that Maryland defense, or at least what it was last season, it's going to be Mike Miller, the offensive coordinator for the 49ers. It's just, I'm really excited. I'm really excited because Biff Poggi as well, for those who didn't see it, at the American Athletic Conference media days, got up, and the first thing he basically said was, 2 questions I think he got, right? And he said, That's it? 2 questions? I should have known that for all you guys who picked us to finish last in this conference. And you can feel that conviction, and you can see how it now matriculates the players, and they're all playing with that edge, and they're all walking around with that chip on their shoulder. And when you got a chance to play against a Big Ten school in prime time on Saturday night, and you have a chance to showcase your talent, because to your point, it's not like these guys are coming from high school or coming from lower level D1 schools to get to Charlotte. No. It's Michigan, it's Maryland, it's Alabama. You can go through the whole list, high level programs that they're coming from. They want to showcase that they still belong on that highest stage. And so for us, the just overall vibe of what this game could like is going to be special.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge stage for Charlotte. I mean, they won't be on anything close to that kind of a stage any other time this season, even if they win. I mean, if they keep winning, they'll be on bigger stages. But this will be a huge stage for them. But in the case of Maryland, right? I mean, this is a team that we already said, good season last year, bowl win. Can they catch up? Because everybody just talks about Penn State being the team that's trying to catch up to Ohio State and Michigan and overtake them. But how legitimate of a chance does Maryland have to sneak in there and get up there with those big boys as well? So a really big stage for them as well. Trying to climb into that upper echelon of the Big Ten East.
You mentioned Mike Locksley and his recruiting prowess. And by the way, Maryland did play those big boys tough last year. They really did. They were in those games late. Yeah. And that's really all you can ask for, is to be in the game late and then hope for a couple bounces to go your way. Tagovailoa, as you mentioned, high amount of experience and a high level of talent. He plays with a fire that his brother never really did. And so that's a lot of fun. But Mike Locksley, I do want to hit on him just one more time real quick, because another one of these guys who has a pedigree, especially at the college football level, of course, with all the work that he did with Nick Saban in Alabama and everything else kind of in his past. But the recruiting and the motivation, when you're around him and you're around that program, you feel this aura out of him, and you see why the kids are willing to do whatever it takes to play for him. And you see why he's one of those guys that you can imagine sitting down and you're at home for a home visit, and he would look you in the eye and convince you that you need to play for him. And when you've got a leader like that now on both sides for this game, I just think that because we talk about the players all the time, and I think everybody talks about the players all the time, but you don't really think about the impact that a coach will have until you see the results. And I think we're finally going to get to see those results with Locks.
Yeah. And the other thing, we talked about Mike Miller, going from Maryland to Charlotte. The guy that came in now as the offensive coordinator, Josh Gaddis, who was at Miami, had been at Michigan before that, but he had been with Locks at Alabama when they coached Tua. So they have a history there. He also brought in Kevin Sumlin on his staff, the former head coach at Arizona and Texas A&M, who's just another really good football mind, so I'm really an offensive mind. So I'm really, kind of curious to just see what that combination of those three guys, how that's, playing out for their offense and for the further development of Tagovailoa.